mentioned from the UGVM Twitter account, I mentioned something to Tim, and then I've had probably 60 sex bots like that one tweet, which is really, really weird. I mean, you get them all the time, but there's loads of them. Like,
well, Tim is a bit of a fitty, isn't he?
Yeah. Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the UGVM podcast. I'm your host, Andy Kavanagh, but you can call me deKay, and with me today are Zoe.
Howdy.
And Kendrick.
Hiya.
And in his UGVM podcast debut, Neil.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Before we start, I believe Zoe's got some corrections from the last...
What? Corrections from last time?
Yeah, we haven't got time. Never mind. Okay.
I don't have them to hand. I can't even remember what they were.
But
you were wrong about everything.
I knew you were going to say that, so we'll just move on.
Okay.
Let's take it as read.
Yeah, I think pretty much the basics were every single year that I specified last episode, I was out by a year. I think that was pretty much it, wasn't
it? Yeah, something to that effect, yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's all in the past. Nobody cares.
deKay, this is not going to make any sense to you until you play Yakuza 6.
Right.
But you are actually supposed to be off by a year, and I'll explain it to you after you play that game.
Right. Okay. That'll be exciting when we get to that. Okay.
Hold that thought close to your heart.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. Right. Anyway, so it would seem that Shenmue is like buses, because you wait for 18 years for one, and then 3 of them come along at once. Because as well as Shenmue 3, which is supposedly still on the cards for this year, I think it's probably likely it might not be, but I think at the moment it's due to be this year. There was recently a Nintendo Direct, only not Nintendo, it's Sega, pretending to do a Nintendo Direct, only for themselves. And at that, one of the things that was announced was Shenmue 1 and 2 HD remakes for the PC, PS4, Xbox One, and not the Switch, which was a bit annoying, but still, it's better than nothing. So I think Zoe might be looking forward to that.
I am very, very looking forward to that. Looking through the details that are out so far, this doesn't really look like it's much of a remake or even much of a remaster. I think it's basically a port. The graphics
that was my
like,
impression as well. Yeah,
everything is just kind of up-resed and smoothed over a bit. I believe they've added widescreen support. There is resolution options on PC. But apart from that, the one big thing that was mentioned was modern controls, the option to have modern or classic controls, which I'm assuming means that you now have analog movement on the left stick should you want it, like a proper game, instead of Shenmue's very strange accelerate on foot with the trigger and steer with the D-pad that it had going on.
Yeah, that was a little weird. But
just kind of a limitation of the Dreamcast only having one stick.
Yeah.
And you can also, in both games, choose between English and Japanese audio, which is a nice little addition.
Yeah. I thought when I played the second game, because the second game didn't have English, I don't think, when I played it.
On Dreamcast, it was only Japanese, and then the Xbox port had the English dub.
Yeah, I thought I was going to miss the English, but in actual fact, I preferred the Japanese. So that'd be quite good to have that.
That's going to be a very interesting artistic choice, because you may recall that the UK port of Shenmue 2 messed with the gender of one of the characters. You may remember that in the original Japanese version, Donyu's lover is a man who's very effeminate in his presentation. And then for the UK version, even though it was still dubbed in Japanese, Japanese language, they re-recorded all the lines with a woman reading them to, present the character as unambiguously female.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so
controversial.
it's going to be very interesting to see if, not only do we have a language switch, but maybe possibly a gender switch for that one character, or maybe they'll do the woke thing and present that character as he was originally intended. To mixed benefit, because the way that he was written was kind of a, derisive stereotype. Yeah. But, if you're looking for representation, you take it where you get it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'd be interesting to see that anyway. So the surprise to me though is that this is coming this year as well. So, I was under the impression they'd essentially kind of lost all the source code or something, along with virtually everything else that they ever made for the Dreamcast. But that might not be the case. So,
well, there was a report about 5 years ago, some leaks out of Sega, that most of the reputable news sites were kind of saying as fact that when they were porting over Space Channel 5 and Sonic Adventure and those things, that Shenmue on Xbox 360 was done. They just never got around to releasing it.
Oh, well, maybe that's the case.
There's something else that I think... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wasn't there a rumour that it was licensing or something like that? Because I saw that at the time and thought, I'll get that, and it never arrived.
I'm not really sure what they've got to license.
Well, it might not be licensing so much as it is royalties, because the cast list for Shenmue is tremendous. Lots and lots and lots and lots of actors.
That's true, although video game actors very, very rarely get royalties.
Well, and see, that's the thing, though. When Shenmue was created, it was the first game of its kind to have that kind of cast. And so the kinds of agreements that the unions, the equity and the Screen Actors people would negotiate now might not have been in place at the time.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. And also they were trying to keep costs down because it was a very, very expensive project. And I wonder, maybe they may have offered slightly less money, but royalties instead, for keep the cost down a bit. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, for sure, we would not have this HD remaster if the response to the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter were not as enthusiastic as it were.
No. Anyway, so there's that to look forward to, and something else that came out of this Sega conference presentation, whatever it was, I don't know, was they've announced the Mega Drive Mini, which kind of already exists in numerous forms, and unfortunately it's being made by AtGames, who have made most of the other Mega Drive basically clone hardware, and none of them are great. I mean, I've got a couple myself, and the main issues with them that I have are that the sound isn't correct. It doesn't affect all games, but those it does affect, it affects quite badly. Megalomania is one that it's awful on the sound, which is a pain because that's the game I play the most. But it's not enough to stop me playing the games on them anyway. But this
expectations are quite low, but someone pointed out that what makes this hardware release different is that Sega has now has access to all of the Atlas properties. Yeah. So they haven't announced a list of games that are going to come out with the Mega Drive Mini, and it's entirely possible that a number of beloved Atlas strategy and RPG properties will become part of this collection.
Sure. So, I mean, when it was announced that AtGames was making this, because they didn't announce who was making it at the conference, it was announced possibly too soon afterwards. I'm not sure AtGames were supposed to be announcing that it was them that were partnering with Sega, but they tweeted, "The rumours are true. Sega is going to release the Mega Drive Mini in Japan powered by the latest AtGames technology. This same new and improved technology will find its way into the US and other territories later this year." And a few hours later they deleted it. So not before there were an awful lot of people who complained and said, please, why are you doing this? And not somebody who actually knows how to make decent hardware and or emulators. And then they later released another statement on their Facebook page that says, "All the negativity is perfectly understandable. You'll either see the improvement this year in the HD hardware or you won't. Talking about it doesn't do much at this point. There is a switch to a proven emulator and other features that have been requested for years, making it into the 2018 HD models." So they're saying they know the previous models have been a bit rubbish and they are definitely going to improve them but
Maybe.
it's still at games. So, and just moving it to another emulator doesn't necessarily mean that the hardware that it's running on is going to be, decent as well. So,
are they just going to do what Hyperkin did and just find something on the internet and stick it in a box?
Well, I'd like to think that they'd do it properly. Obviously, there are developers within Sega who have or have been sub-licensed from Sega to actually create Mega Drive emulators in the past. I think is M2.
Are they the ones who made the 3DS ones?
Yes, yeah, they are.
They are very good.
They are. So, I mean, it's possible that it might be their technology that they're using. You can hope. But on the other hand, it might be something more like Digital Eclipse.
I was going to mention them, that they're kind of hit and miss in terms of their emulation.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know. So just because it's a known emulator or a proven emulator doesn't necessarily mean an awful lot at this stage. So they're right to say talking about it doesn't do much at this point, apart from the fact that it's still slightly disappointing.
I just thought of something.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, so it's wait and see on this. Then not pre-order it and get excited. See what the reviews are like before you commit to it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any point really. It looks quite nice, but it's just like a very small Mega Drive in the same way that the Nintendo ones are very small NES and Super NES.
I was about to say something just occurred to me. Didn't Sega and Sonic Team in particular make a big point out of hiring some of the ROM hackers and the independent developers who've worked on emulators to help make Sonic Mania the beloved product that it is?
It pretty much is a fan project.
Yeah.
It was Christian Whitehead, I think.
Christian Whitehead and who's the other one? Something with a rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're basically...
Imagine if some talent of that caliber were involved with the Mega Drive Mini.
Absolutely.
That could be a confidence builder.
It could be, but still, at games. Why at games? Why even involve them at all unless there's some license thing where they have got priority over creating any kind of clone hardware somewhere.
Whose daughter have they kidnapped for ransom to hold on to that contract?
Yeah, who knows? So I'd like to be proven wrong. But anyway, and the other thing, there was another announcement about the Sega Ages banner is coming back for some games to be released on the Switch, including Thunder Force 4 and Phantasy Star, and I forget the others. But it's not completely clear as to whether they are going to be emulated or slightly improved or what at the moment. I'm
under the impression that these Sega Ages releases will all be downloadable as well, rather than regular media releases.
Yeah,
which means that they're essentially just Nintendo Store releases of the old classic 8 and 16-bit games.
Yeah, probably.
Do you think this announcement finally puts the nail in the coffin of the idea of another virtual console as a concept, a multi-platform thing, given that it's been a year, we've still heard nothing, and now Sega are just releasing their own things themselves?
Yeah, possibly. I think Nintendo still have announced that something is coming as part of the online system that they're having. I think it's still been suggested that we would get a new or an extra or something Nintendo game of some kind as a virtual console release with possible online play for as long as we keep playing in a PS Plus type way. But there's still no more details on that, and they haven't said anything on that for a while now. But they've, I don't know, still coming, maybe. The Legends are coming. Yeah, so I didn't see anything else announced at that Sega conference, but I think they were the main things anyway. So, Kendrick, then, have you got any news?
Yes, related to the Mega Drive Mini. As you know, there are a number of other classic game development shops who are jumping on that bandwagon. You'll remember in our Christmas podcast, we talked about the Atari box.
Yes.
Which was supposed to come out at the end of December and then didn't. There was a pre-order snafu and then a long delayed announcement of a delay. And now the Atari box, which has been renamed the Atari VCS, is scheduled to come out sometime in, I believe the new date now is either August or September. And as you recall, this is just a plain old AMD Linux box, not too dissimilar to what you may remember was called the Ouya, another Linux-based emulation platform. And it's still not clear what you can play on this thing. It's been suggested that it's going to be Atari 2600 and possibly Atari Jaguar games. But apart from that, there's been no new news apart from the name being changed, and that was announced at the end of March. So I have a lot of skepticism about this, and I want to keep it fresh in mind, if only because it's getting lost in the noise of all of the other classic consoles that are being announced. Mm-hmm. The one that really has my attention is SNK Playmore announced the NeoGeo Classic 6 days ago, and we've had absolutely no updates about it since then. It's all been speculation, but the smart money is that this is a successor to the NeoGeo X handheld. I don't remember if any of the three of you picked one of those up.
I didn't know. It was quite difficult to come by over here, and also quite expensive. It was something like £200.
It was quite expensive, and the game distribution was terrible. And it turned out that the actual hardware was just some repurposed Taiwanese handheld thing that was, originally intended for crappy piracy purposes.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah. Didn't they come down on them in the end and basically told them to stop producing it because it was awful?
They were dissatisfied not just with the poor quality of the interface, but also I think with the what they were actually earning on the thing. They were expecting this amount of sales and this amount of royalties, and almost none of it materialized for them. So a lot of fans got a middling to mediocre new emulation platform, and the actual IP holders made squat.
Yeah, it looked really good though. It looked really nice. The controllers looked really good as well.
It all looked great, but it was more flash than substance.
Yeah.
I have one, and one of the weirdest qualities of it is that the handheld docks into a doohickey that looks like the original Neo Geo AES console.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that you can charge the battery. You have to have it docked, and not just docked, but turned on in order to recharge the battery. And that was the case for a couple of months after it was released, until they distributed a little cable dongle that you could use that would attach the power connector, the lead from the power adapter to the dock straight into the handheld. It was the most bizarre bodge ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're following that up. I'm trying not to be too enthusiastic about it because I do love Neo Geo games probably a bit more than they deserve. I'm also worried that maybe this audience has dwindled to the point where the name doesn't have quite the prominence or the excitement factor that it used to. And for sure, I think none of the three of you have ever owned any Neo Geo hardware outside of, well, none of you owned the X, so I can't imagine that any of you would have owned any of the home systems.
I do. I have a Neo Geo CD sat in front of me.
Oh, do you?
I do, yeah.
I forgot about that. What games do you have for that?
I have, I don't know. I've got a few fighting games, obviously. I've got
I was going to say they're almost all fighting games.
Yeah, I've got Magician Lord, which is the worst game ever made ever.
It's a fantastic platformer. What are you talking about?
What, Magician Lord?
Yes.
No. I could do a podcast about Magician Lord on its own.
We'll save that for later.
Yeah, no, I genuinely can't remember it. I haven't played it in a long time. To be honest, I lost the video cable for it, and then it turned up in a box for my Sega 32X. But I've since then lost the ability to plug it into anything, so I haven't played it for ages. But yeah, I've got one with a number of games.
Anyway, so the main chat topic I wanted to bring up today is the Quantic Dreams video game studio lawsuit against Le Monde and one other French periodical. I can't remember which news outlet it is that they're suing, but anyway, the allegation has been that there is a hostile workplace in Quantic Dreams. One particular offense was that photographs of employees had been photoshopped so that their heads were on other bodies in compromising and humiliating positions. And there were other accusations of sexist and racist behavior in the offices. And so instead of normally when a video game studio has these accusations leveled at them, they know enough to have a boilerplate response that says we take it very seriously, we're looking into it, we don't want anyone to feel like they're not able to come to work and be productive, and and then they let it sit for a while, and the heat the heat dies off, and then they can move on with their lives. And what's happened here is, by bringing this lawsuit, they've invoked the Streisand effect and have gotten attention from all of the video game blogs and journals and magazines, and gotten themselves attention for the lawsuit instead of the games that they're producing. I believe that the next one that's being released from them is something called Detroit 2 Human.
Yes,
Detroit Only Human.
Yeah. Detroit Become Human.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit Become Human. Right, and it's about it's about androids in the United States doing law enforcement, because that's not a tired concept.
Yeah. Interestingly, in addition to that, one of their other games is on PS Plus next month as well. So
it is.
Which one is that?
I saw that.
Beyond Two Souls.
I
was
thinking that looked interesting. That's the PS4 version, isn't it? Not the PS3 one. Yeah.
It's a very odd game.
I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, Beyond Two Souls is the one that Ellen Page provided likeness and voice for in response to accusations that her likeness and voice were being used improperly in The Last of Us.
Yes. Because Ellie does look an awful lot like a young Ellen Page.
Yes.
Anyway. Yeah, when she complained, they added a few more freckles to her model to try and make her look different.
Anyway, I want to... Go ahead.
Some of the quotes that Cage has come out with after the allegations have
Hang
been
on,
quite
before you say anything there, I just want one bit of clarification. So who exactly is the complaint aimed at? Is it the studio as a whole, or is it him, or is it unnamed parties within the studio?
Before we go on, I want to point out something. I'm exempt from this requirement because I'm American, but since the three of you are subjects of Her Majesty the Queen, you're required to say David Cage in an East London accent.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So,
or David Cage.
David Cage, yes.
David Cage.
Right. Okay.
David Cage.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
That is
anyway. So some of these accusations leveled at David Cage were to the effect of, you've made all these jokes that are racist and homophobic, and some of his quotes on the subject are brilliant. You want to talk about homophobia? I work with Ellen Page, who fights for LGBT rights, despite the fact that Beyond Two Souls was finished about 3 years before she came out. You want to talk about racism? I work with Jesse Williams. So basically what he's saying is, some of my colleagues are black, so I can't be racist. Which is always a good defense.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Well, it's a common deflection point. They're not addressing the actual complaint. They're trying to obfuscate what was actually done by citing an example of something completely irrelevant, and it's not a good look. On the other hand, this type of work environment is not uncommon in video game studios in general and in technology as a rule. I'm not saying that makes it right, just that it's, it's unusual for these complaints to ever actually result in changes to a workplace unless there's leadership that genuinely supports making those kinds of transformational efforts to make a place welcoming.
Yeah. Yeah, and also a lot of it, especially the lower level stuff, is just dismissed as like office banter, isn't it? It's kind of, it's mostly harmless jokes and banter, but then clearly for some people it goes too far, or even just the banter itself is enough to be offensive or whatever. So
what I wanted to say was the lawsuit is the news, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable speculating what the actual workplace is like, having not been in it and having heard no firsthand accounts of what it's like. So on one hand, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. On the other hand, I don't know if David Cage has any credibility to expend on this.
I don't even think you needed to add that last bit. I don't think David Cage has had any credibility for a long time. He's an egomaniac who has made some interesting but very questionable games who seems to think he's changing the landscape forever with each new QTE Fest that's not wholly dissimilar to the last one.
Yeah. Okay.
Before we move on,
yeah.
I just wanted to say two things. One, a correction, because I can do them live now because I'm here. Ouya is Android-based, not Linux-based. And secondly, Kendrick,
and hang on. And Android is based on...
Well, okay, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's not running Linux in the same way that the VCS is. And also, Kendrick, did you read the piece about the Atari VCS on Eurogamer a couple of weeks ago?
I might have. Remind me, what did they have to say?
There was a very, very long interview with one of the engineers or the people behind it, and EG were basically kind of asking, like, so what is this machine? What does it do? And it was kind of fascinating reading it. The guy was basically saying things along the lines of, well, you could potentially do this and this. You could play old Atari games. You could maybe play some slightly newer games. There might be some games on a store. Maybe you could listen to music or watch Netflix. We don't really know. It kind of sounds like they've made a box, and apart from having Pac-Man on an emulator with it, they're not entirely sure what purpose it serves. They just wanted to make something.
Good.
I'm not really sure they know what the purpose of it is, which is good because nobody else did. We thought they might, but I'm not sure they do either.
Wow, it's like George Orwell interviewed the people who run Hello Games. It's that level of evasiveness.
It looks nice though. The hardware, it looks pretty.
It's physically made of wood as well, isn't it? It's actual wood. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it does look like an old Atari.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But for $300, can you get yourself a better Linux machine?
Yes, you get a Raspberry Pi in a wooden box.
There are some lovely wooden cases for Raspberry Pis.
There are, yeah.
I think I'm the last person in the world who doesn't own a Raspberry Pi.
Right. We'll go and get one.
Okay.
They're like £9.
I was going to say, we're going to open up a GoFundMe campaign for Zode so that he can have a Raspberry Pi of his own, like every other school child in the UK does.
I'm not that young anymore.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. News from Neil then.
Yes, I know this is a perennial topic, but Animal Crossing has loot boxes now, or more accurately, loot cookies. This is a game that's only been out for a couple of months, but they seem to be putting stuff in it every week at the moment. There are events and new things and new sets of furniture. But the controversial move in the latest update is they've introduced cookies that you have to buy
with
using
real money,
the Leaf tokens. Well, you can earn the Leaf tokens slowly through playing the game, and I think I've got about 700 knocking around. But for 50 Leaf tokens, you can buy a cookie, and you may get a piece of furniture that you want, or you may get something that you've already got. And the one that caught my eye, they actually have a character called Hopkins in, which I thought was appropriate. And his set of cookies have video game consoles.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did notice, to Nintendo's credit, they do tell you the chances of getting any particular item. And one of the items is actually a Nintendo Switch with the blue and red Joy-Cons, which looks really nice. But you've only got a 3% chance of getting that. So for 50 Leaf tokens, which is, I think you can get for $3.99, you can get 200 Leaf tokens. So it's about 50p. You've got a 3% chance of getting a Nintendo Switch. And one of the features...
It's you only get 100 for $3.99.
Oh god, it's even worse than that.
For $1.99, you can buy 45, which doesn't quite buy you one.
Which is not quite enough. So that's pretty. Yeah, that's poor. I mean, I must admit, I've not spent any real money on it, and I've played it an awful lot. I know you still play it as well, though, because I see when you've been on at 5 o'clock in the morning. I get
up watching through your window.
I've been I've booted it up every single day since launch, and I'm not entirely sure why.
Now, catch me up here. Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is the smartphone iteration of this game, which was produced by the people who make Pokemon Go or something. Is it related to the Ingress people?
No, it's a Nintendo original game. It's produced by their own in-house development team. And it's using the assets from Animal Crossing. So it is an official Nintendo game.
But I think it was made in part by, what was the company they partnered with? It wasn't Niantic. I think, is that the name of the people who did Pokemon? There was like a big mobile partnering company that they did a partnership with like a year or two ago. I'm trying to remember what they're called. They're like a really big player. No, they've got like a really big foothold in the mobile market, especially in China. They put out like loads of match 3s and that kind of thing. And Nintendo kind of partnered with them for their mobile strategy thing.
Are we talking about Baidu? Is it Baidu?
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up. No, they're called something. Yes. Anyway, yeah, they are called something. But they, I think they've been kind of Nintendo have been making the game, and then they've been mobilizing it, for want of a better word.
Yeah, I did read one article that said that they'd been disappointed with the return on it. It's not monetized particularly well for them. But I think more importantly, they're using it as a promotional tool. Because, I mean, if you've got a character from the game actually holding a Nintendo Switch in all the publicity that they're putting out for this latest release, then that, I think, sort of tells you where they're going with this. It's a gateway to getting people to buy a Switch and buy Animal Crossing on the Switch that might not otherwise have heard of it.
Yeah, I think they did the same with Pokemon Go. When Pokemon Go was a massive hit, and they then were released Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon, and Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon were two of the biggest selling Pokemon games for quite some generations. I mean, they all sell well, but these were even higher than that. I'm pretty sure Pokemon Go must have had some, something to do with that.
They're called DNA.
Yes. Yeah, but they're DENA, aren't they?
Yeah, DENA, yeah. So they're the ones. Nintendo have kind of brought them in to assist with all of their mobile games to make them mobile monetized efficient.
Yeah. Just going back to the loot boxes, crates, cookies, whatever. Did anybody else see the news from this week? I only read it today, but I think it's from a few days ago, about the ruling in Belgium now. And this is calling back to a previous episode as well, where this was about to go to be tested in the courts. But basically, it seems that the likes of loot crates and stuff are gambling in Belgium, and as a result will be subject to whatever laws are necessary for gambling, which means it can't really happen in video game form, it would appear.
Yeah. The Netherlands made the same ruling last week. Yeah.
So that's going to have to be stripped out of a lot of games.
Well, at a high level, though, it's not that it would be prohibited. It's just that there would have to be age restrictions and tax implications that would be applied to the games were they to be sold and played in those two countries, and then by extension in the rest of the EU.
I believe so, and there would be other rulings as well. Like we have fruit machines, they would have to be posted on them, the payout rates and things like that, because it's ultimately now a different category. It's gambling, not video gaming. So it's a shift in which laws apply now. So so they're going to lose an audience somewhere in these countries, and the EU being the EU, it's likely now other countries in the EU will then follow suit with the same or similar ruling. So
yeah, I mean, I suspect that with it just being Belgium and the Netherlands for now, they'll probably just ignore it and just shut down Ultimate Team, just turn off the store so you can't buy the packs in those two countries. But if it ended up being EU wide, then things are going to have to change quite drastically.
It's also going to be a big problem for games which are almost entirely based around loot boxes. I mean, I'm thinking mostly mobile games and things like that.
Yeah.
But because obviously FIFA has its actual FIFA component and the ability to do certain things without buying stuff online. But there are an awful lot of games where you can't do much at all without buying random packs of stuff. So they're all out the window in those countries.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, the Belgian minister was kind of talking about wanting to do prison sentences and stuff on those responsible.
Oh God, that's quite serious.
Lock them all up. So you have something to tell us about new Castlevania game as well. Which,
I saw Castlevania. This is another game that's a beloved favourite. So my ears pricked up when I saw it, and then digging further into it, it turns out it's a free-to-play title for iOS. But the nice thing is it's got 4-player co-op. So we will see how that turns out. I think that it's only out in Japan at the moment, or it's coming out in Japan with no plans to release it in the West. But I imagine it will be sooner or later if they can find a monetization model for it that works.
Yeah, I never went from so interested to so disinterested in something within the same sentence.
I kind of thought that it would appeal, but then I saw the caveats on it, and we should wait and see on that.
So what's the worst sentence? Castlevania.
It was basically
announced for iOS or Mega Drive Mini developed by AT Games.
Well, the Mega Drive Mini announced that wouldn't really excite me all that much, to be honest. I've got a Mega Drive and various other devices that play Mega Drive games, so I don't really. I mean, I didn't even bother buying a Nintendo Mini of any description in the end, so that wouldn't bother me. But this, it was literally the announcement. It was a new Castlevania game coming to iOS. Oh.
Konami announced ages ago that they weren't making games anymore, and now they've started again, and you kind of wish that they'd actually stuck to it.
Yeah, come on, they had Bomberman for the Switch, and
Metal Gear Survive.
You get the impression that Grimoire of Souls is just a reuse of a lot of existing Castlevania assets, kind of smashed together.
But that's every other Castlevania game.
Well, yes, but I wonder if this is not a preemptive strike against the Bloodstained project, which has been delayed a little bit, but has sustained.
It's like 4 years late already, isn't it?
Well, but it's also sustained fan interest in all that time, which is astonishing to me. Mm-hmm. You know, that the people who want the spiritual Castlevania successor that Bloodstained is are still very, very interested in it in spite of all the delays. So, granted, that means it's a very small and very I'm trying to think of a nice word to use here, and I'm coming up with all lunatic and help me out. What's a good word for someone who really, really, really likes something to the exclusion of eating and sex?
So?
No, I can always find time to eat.
Okay.
I set them up, you knock them down.
Yeah.
All right. But you know what I'm saying is that Konami is trying to assert their ownership of this concept. And, if everyone's having the same reaction that you had, deKay, then this isn't really going to work unless they start up their game production again in earnest and win back that goodwill and win back that fan base.
Yeah. They've got a lot of work to do. I didn't like it when they bought Hudson Soft and basically just killed Hudson Soft. It's like, we just buy all your stuff, and then what will we do with it? Nothing. And then after 6 years, they released one Bomberman game and some nonsense. Brilliant, thanks. Never mind.
So did they buy them after they'd made Act Zero?
Yeah, it was quite a while after
Why?
that thing. Because they were cheap. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so moving on. Zoe.
The ZX Vega Plus. I have nothing to say about that.
Anybody's
be ashamed to leave it out.
Is anybody interested in that?
Go on, man.
There's another court case.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it seems, allegedly, there's nothing definite that's come out, but previous mouthpiece for the company making it, but he definitely wasn't employed by them, but he definitely was employed by them, but he definitely wasn't. Lee Fogarty, who ran the website for them and seemed to be their unofficial but possibly official spokesperson, it appears he is now suing the company for not paying him.
Oh.
Apparently, allegedly. But
that sounds fun.
It is. And they're still definitely on track to definitely releasing something and actually definitely have it out in people's hands definitely by the end of this month, or possibly next month, or possibly the month after. Maybe.
Or possibly none of those months.
Oh, it's definitely none of those months, is it?
Yep.
Anyway, your news then.
My news, some very, very clever people have hacked the Switch. From the sounds of it, they've done a very, very thorough job. And if Digital Foundry's report is to be believed, it's been done on a hardware level, and this can't be patched.
It would seem so, yeah. And it also appears you can do it with a piece of wire.
Yeah. So there is some kind of boot ROM bug exploit in the Tegra X1 chip that is being used in the Switch. So until they bring out another revision, all Model 1 Switches are vulnerable to this. They've already got Linux running in full on a Switch with 3D acceleration enabled. So it's only a matter of time, really, before the whole thing turns into another PSP.
Possibly. Have you seen they've managed to get Wind Waker working on it?
No, that's
Yes.
impressive.
Yeah, at pretty much full speed, it seems.
I mean,
because obviously once they've got access to the hardware, because it's pretty standard hardware, all the documentation for the hardware's there. So most of the problems they normally have with emulation, all the reverse engineering stuff, don't need to bother. It's all there.
Well, I mean,
I do want to take issue with your comparison, though, because one of the reasons that the PSP was so thoroughly exploited was because the private keys, the hashes for the private keys, were exposed in a separate hack. So they had access not only to all of the hardware, but all of the code and all the drivers to make that go as well. So I would suspect, deKay, that the what was it that you said they had running on the Switch? It's completely exited my mind.
It's a GameCube emulator, essentially.
Yeah. Right. But there must be an in-house Nintendo GameCube emulator that runs on the Switch that would be miles better than anything that would run in a Linux context. So I wonder if they have access to that as well.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know how close the actual hardware would be, but
if they can get null DC running on it, then I'll be very, very happy. I do worry that this might potentially be a big disaster in terms of its lifetime sales and software support, but it would make a very, very nice emulation machine.
Yeah.
I just
then maybe
hope
we get
that,
Shenmue.
Well, I just hope that this makes Nintendo more motivated to release a hardware revision that is a little bit sturdier and also resolves this issue, because they seem to be completely satisfied to just skate along on this same hardware with no improvements whatsoever. So if this encourages that, then I'll be on board. Mm-hmm. And I'll buy an old one to hack. No, I won't, because that's against our charter.
Yeah. Well, they've always been. Well, I guess it depends. Are they treating it as a handheld or as a main console? Because they've always been very good at continually revising and improving their handhelds. But the only home console revision I can think of that they've done is the Wii, where they made it worse.
No, they've done a lot of internal changes. That they consolidate a lot of components and stuff like that, reduce the power consumption, things like that. So even if it doesn't appear to be a big thing, but they could quite easily integrate a fix to this in a minor revision, so they wouldn't have to completely redesign the console. Obviously, they can't fix the ones that are out there now, but they wouldn't need to do anything major necessarily.
I miss that. I miss that about video game hardware, where you would have the first iteration of it, which was a little chunky and a little hot and a little slow, and then there would be a newer, slightly slimmer, slightly cooler version that ran a little bit better,
but had a new issue of some other kind.
Well, yes, but still, I like having an original Saturn and a slightly revised Saturn and an original Xbox 360 and an Xbox 360 Slim and a PS3 Fat and a PS3 Slim. I have a problem.
You do. When you say you miss it, they've done it with the PS4 and the Xbox One as well.
That's true.
Yeah, but I'm less motivated to buy multiples of those because it's not technically the same system, because all of the revisions are adding like the 4K graphics and adding this nutty storage solution and adding that silly peripheral function. It's not quite the same. They're not doing it because it's a better system. They're doing it because they're trying to make more money, and I guess I can't really fault them for that. But
there are PS4s and Xbox Ones that are completely different to the originals that don't have the extra power.
That's true.
That would be the Xbox One S, and then I forget what they call the PS4 revision.
It's just called, people just call it the PS4 Slim. I think they just call it the PS4. They basically just switch models.
Yeah.
So it's they brought it out at the same time as the Pro, give or take a couple of weeks, with the rounded curved edges. I think it's quite ugly. I really like the original PS4, but I think the new one is just very odd looking, and the PS4 Pro just kind of looks like a big sandwich.
I'm not fussed. It's just in a cupboard.
Well, yeah. Whereas the original Xbox One looks ridiculous, and the Xbox One X is a thing of beauty.
Maybe. I think actually the Xbox One S rather than X actually looks reasonably good. I think.
Well, they're basically the same, but white and black.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so that's all the news. Play. And I would like to hear what everybody has been playing. So, seeing as he's got so much choice, let's start with Zoe.
I do have a very long list. It's because you didn't invite me on last time. It's been 2 months.
I invited you. You didn't come on the day that we decided.
Okay, sorry about that. Right, I'll work from the bottom and go up to the main ones.
Okay.
Because these will be quick. I played through Forza Motorsport 7. I started it. I played all the way through it. It was quite long and quite boring. It's pretty. It's Forza Motorsport. It's a track game. You do the same thing over and over again. Going, this looks nice. Why is it taking 4 hours to load a race? Repeat for 25 hours and then you're done. I played That Dragon Cancer all the way through in one sitting, which is a nice idea. I think it's meant to be touching. It's obscure for the sake of being obscure, hard to work out what's going on. It feels horrible to play. There's some terrible mini games. I feel guilty thinking it's really bad because it was made with such good intentions, but it's a terrible game. Mm-hmm. I played through Rise of the Tomb Raider in full, which is also really, really pretty, but also really, really good. I think it might be my third favourite Uncharted game. The story is absolute bobbins, but it's really fun. Lots of jumping, lots of shooting. It's like the reboot, but a bit better.
I'm sorry, I'm American. I don't understand the word bobbins.
Rubbish.
Yeah, basically. Not very good. I was trying to be polite.
Well, I was going to say on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being pants, 10 being bollocks, where does bobbins stand?
Well, bollocks is normally bad unless you prefix it with dogs.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Yeah, this is complicated.
Dogs' bollocks are good. Human bollocks are bad.
When you think about it, really, that's not the case, is it? It really should be the other way around.
You would think so, but yeah, for whatever reason, the dog's bollocks are a really good thing, but something that is just bollocks, no, not good at all.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Please continue while I absorb this new information.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go analyze your bollocks. The Unfinished Swan, which again, it's a lot better than That Dragon Cancer, but it's kind of a similar. Sometimes it feels like it's being obscure for the sake of being obscure, but it's really, really pretty in a kind of fascinating, whitewashed way. Some really nice ideas.
How does it look so good? I mean, I played through it myself, and I agree, but how does it look so good when it's basically just completely white?
I don't know. It's just such a unique art style. It's really, like, I mean, I spent 5 minutes just thinking that the game had crashed.
Yeah.
Because you start on a completely white screen.
Yeah.
And you can kind of move around this white screen, but you can't see anything, so you just assume the game is broken.
I thought it was still loading, yeah.
Yeah, and then you just hammer all the buttons, and then one of the buttons makes you throw some paint, which then sticks to bits of the white thing, so you can make out what the world is, and then you just go around throwing paint everywhere. And it's really good idea. There were just some bits of it that were just a bit dull. I'm thinking specifically the bit with all the vines, where you're just kind of waiting for hours for vines to grow. The bit in the night in the forest where you're triggering all the lights is a bit tedious as well. But it's a really nice idea. I went back and played it after discovering that that's kind of where Edith Finch came from, and I think that was their first game. And yeah, you can see what they're going for. It's a nice idea, not always perfectly executed, but worth playing. I played through the whole of Telltale Batman, which I won't go into too much detail in because Luffer discussed it at length last time. This is just the first series. I've picked up the second one. I haven't started it yet. That was started quite well, got really, really good, and then tailed off hard. I thought episode 2 was one of the best Telltale ones I've played, and then it just kind of got worse and worse and worse, and by the end it was just a bit falling apart at the seams. Lego Dimensions, which has to be among the worst games I've ever played. It is like almost irredeemably bad. It is so painful.
Is this just the base game, or have you actually got any of the additional levels?
I've played the base game for about 3 hours, and I just hate it. I played the Portal level, which I actually quite enjoyed. The portal level was okay. Nice, slow pace, works with it. I'm currently about halfway through the Sonic one, which is just an abomination.
It's far better than any other Sonic game, bar Sonic Mania, that's been released in the last 12 years more. Yeah,
it's absolutely categorically not true.
The best bit, there's a brilliant bit in the middle of it. There's a cave, and Gollum comes out of the cave to nick the rings.
Okay, well, I haven't got there yet. I've just done the bit where it suddenly and unexpectedly turns into Resogun.
Yes.
That was weird.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I remember. In fact, that bit crashed for me multiple times.
Yeah, but the first time that I died by falling forwards off the front of the level.
You thought it's just like a Sonic game.
You can't fall off the front of a level in a Sonic game.
No, you normally just fall through the floor.
Well, if I may interrupt this debate for just a moment, in Lego Dimensions, do you have access to these extra areas without purchasing the toys that are meant to correspond to them, or do you have to purchase the toy bits in order to get to them?
Right. Well, there's a number of different parts to it. Okay, so there are different worlds. Each world has its own small-ish hub. In order to access the hub, you need one character from that particular world. So if you want to have that, it goes to the Simpsons hub, then you need a Simpsons character. If you want to go to the Ninjago hub, you need a Ninjago character, and the Goonies hub, the Goonies character. Okay. In addition to that, there are a number of extra levels, which are large level, full Lego-sized levels that take probably about an hour and a half to get through. And for those, you need to buy a specific level pack.
Okay, and this is unlocked in-game with what I assume is a chip or some RFID,
it's an RFID
doodad in the toy. Yeah. Right, okay. The only reason that this is on my mind is because my wife has all of the Doctor Who characters for Lego Dimensions, but does not actually have the game. And I don't understand that.
So there is a
I do. Level, she's doing it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are really nice little models.
Yeah. And I like you just using the wrong ones in the wrong place. That's good. So you've played Sonic, you've played whatever the other one you just said, and I've
Portal. Portal is the only thing that I thought had some redeeming features. That was quite enjoyable. The Sonic one just feels so horrible and wrong, but the game is just the controls are just beyond terrible. It's so unresponsive.
Is this because you have to keep swapping characters and?
I mean, I don't like the fact you have to keep. I mean, because normally I play downstairs on my big projector screen, which is about 5 meters from my TV. So I was trying to play Lego Dimensions, and I just thought, all right, I'll just pop the thing on the pad, the toy pad or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And then I'll go sit on the sofa, and then it said, all right, now you have to move these around. And then you get in a boss fight, and then every 5 seconds you're switching models around. Like, I'm sitting further away than the wire will reach.
Yeah. Well, you see, my experience
I had to cart my PS4 upstairs and plug it into a TV just so I could sit within reach of the pad.
Yeah. Well, my experience of it was different to that because I played the entire thing through in co-op, right? So firstly, you have to swap characters less frequently because there's 2 of you. So you already have 2 characters on the go at any one time. And we put the base unit thing between us on the sofa. And we just put all the characters within easy reach. So that wasn't too much of a problem. Some of the, do you know the colour changing portal-y things that you have to do? Some of those were a pain, having to keep moving the characters around on the pad as the pad changes colour. They were a bit frustrating, but for mostly changing the characters isn't too much of a problem. You also find some of the characters have, because they've got several different traits that they can do, you find if you've got a lot of characters, some characters will be able to do a lot of separate things, so you don't need to change quite so often.
Okay. Well, when I've been playing through the base game, I've just been using the base 3 characters. I mean, I do have a whole bunch of other ones, but I've not actually put any of them on yet.
You only need the original 3 to actually get through the story. There's locked off areas that you need other ones for, but in actual fact, you can buy them with studs in the game.
Yeah, it said hire a hero a few times.
Yeah,
but it's just the controls feel so sluggish and unresponsive. The camera is horrible. It's very rarely clear how far you are in terms of depth, especially when you're jumping. And when you smash a load of bricks and then you get all the kind of jumpy ones that you have to assemble, and you're pressing and holding the assemble button and it's just not doing anything, and there's just like 2 square pixels that you have to be standing in to make it work, even if you're standing right in the middle of it or to the side. It just doesn't do it unless you are on the exact spot that it doesn't mark, and I just found it so frustrating to get through.
I get what you're saying about those things, but I've played so many Lego games, and 100% in virtually every single one of them, and they're the same in every Lego game. It's not just Lego Dimensions; all of them have the same kind of issues, and I've just got used to them to the point where it doesn't matter. So.
I get that if you play something enough, even when it's kind of fundamentally broken, then you just kind of like, I don't understand people who say that they can't play Sonic Adventure because it's too buggy, because I can get through the entire thing in an hour with my eyes closed. But I can also see that actually, the camera is kind of broken, and if you can't do the whole thing on autopilot, it's probably quite annoying. And that's kind of how I feel about the Lego games. I just find them kind of really frustratingly unintuitive.
Yeah. But you're missing out in Paperboy. There's Paperboy, and there's Defender, and there's Gauntlet, and there's Robotron in the Midway pack. Brilliant.
Okay, I've no idea. Jamie of ugvm fame has just got back from a tour of Japan, where he's picked me up a WonderSwan Color, which I'm excited to receive delivery of. But he basically dumped his extensive Lego Dimensions collection on me before he left. So I know he's got Ninjago and Goonies and Simpsons and a few other bits and pieces, and Sonic and Portal. So I just thought I'd give the ones I was interested in a run through. But yeah, the Portal one is good. It's the only one I've played that kind of feels like it works with the constraints of the Lego one.
Yeah.
Because just the kind of puzzling element, it just as a slower paced third person Portal, it feels quite natural. So I'd recommend giving that a go if you haven't already.
I have, but yes, everyone else.
Well, everyone else.
Yeah.
Right, moving on. I listened to the last podcast and I can't remember if you mentioned this. Life is Strange farewell bonus episode.
Yes, I think I did.
You probably should have done. It's magnificent, isn't it?
It was good, but it was ultimately pointless. It didn't really tell a great deal of story. So I mean, it was nice to have. And I don't think
it needed to tell a great deal.
No,
well, actually, no. I think it told enough. I think the ending, apart from making me far too emotional, the context of the ending and the kind of the timing of the car driving away at the end kind of gave a bit of insight as to why Chloe is quite as fucked up as she is.
Yes, there is that. Yeah.
And yeah, the scene at the end with the dictaphone, it kind of you kind of go, okay, right, this is really starting to make sense. Yeah. I can see why you completely fell off the rails.
Yeah.
But I found it deeply moving and yes, very, very good. So that's all of my long list apart from God of War, the new one, which is called God of War, not to be confused with God of War.
I wish they wouldn't keep doing this,
I wish they wouldn't keep doing this as well.
I propose that we call it God of War 4 out of spite. May we do that?
We could, but it's the 7th one.
Moving on.
Yeah. So God of War 7, God of War 4, God of War. Oh God, I've got confused now.
It's the O God of War.
Yeah, oh God of War. Yeah, let's call it O God of War.
God harder.
Yeah, it's God of War, but not as we know it. It's God of War, but not in any way like God of War, apart from the fact that you're playing a old angry god man with a red stripe down him. They've changed everything, and I'm a big God of War fanboy. I've played all of the other 6 numerous times. I love them very much, not in the same order that most people do, but they are all just wonderful button mashers of obscene spectacle. This has got a very, very fixed, very close over-the-shoulder camera, and it's really slow. And you have an axe that is not wholly dissimilar to Mjolnir. You just fling it at things and then call it back. And you have a small boy following you around. Because, I don't know, to try and give Kratos some more depth. But all he seems to do is shout boy to this child in a very angry manner. whenever he does anything.
When you are a father, you will understand that is how you treat your children.
Yeah, but no, kill that deer, boy. No, you're doing it wrong, boy.
Yep.
Stay behind me, boy.
So I take it that you haven't played the new God of War game very long then. If you're not, there are certain changes the further into the game that you get.
I've been led to believe that things change quite dramatically. I'm only about 5 hours in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So he's still very much calling him boy. There was one brilliant scene where he gets lost in the woods and your QTE prompt comes up and it just says square and then it just says boy. And you just keep pressing square and he says boy. So it's very much a press X to Jason, press square to boy kind of bizarre thing. I'm enjoying it. It's really pretty. The story's quite interesting. It's got some very big spectacle. Not apart from one scene in a lake. I've not seen anything yet that's kind of got the whoa Jesus moments that the first three had, but I'm sure they're coming. But it just feels odd. I know that you supposedly get more interesting weapons as the game goes on, but I'm 5 hours in, I've still got my axe, and that's basically got 2 moves: hit and throw. And because I'm not very good at it, I seem to be spending most of my time throwing because that way you can stay back. So it's basically aim, throw, recall, aim, throw, recall, about 5-6 times for each enemy, and until they're all dead.
Oh.
So yeah, it's a bit repetitive so far, but another thing that's quite annoying and is really making me pine for a nice 4K TV with the PS4 Pro even more than I already was, is it feels like it's been very, very heavily optimized for HDR, and then they haven't really bothered scaling it back. So I'm just playing on a standard 1080 TV on a regular PS4, and there are scenes where kind of like you walk out of a cave and it's just white, and then it really struggles to fade back in so you can actually see it, and you can tell that there's supposed to be some really dramatic HDR effect when you walk out of there, but my TV has a really small color range and can't actually display it.
Yeah.
I find that discouraging because part of the remit was that none of the games were to be missing features or missing functionality if you weren't playing them in 4K.
I don't think I would describe it as missing features or missing functionality. I've found a few scenes where things have been a bit too bright and there have been details missing because the brightness is overwatched, where I just think this has been mastered for HDR. I'm missing out a bit here because they haven't quite scaled it back right. It's certainly nothing enough to be game breaking, but there's just been like probably 7 or 8 scenes that probably aren't even more than like 5 or 6 seconds long each, where I've just gone, oh, I need a new TV, don't I?
So it's not a hard sell for 4K, but perhaps a gentle swat on the bum.
I mean, it's the only game I've played so far where I've thought this would be much better. Yeah, I can see how this would be better, other than just like a bit of an up-res. But I can see it's trying to show me something that my TV is physically incapable of doing. So I'm just going to have to get a new TV.
It's kind of like those adverts for 4K TVs when you're watching it on an ordinary HD TV. And they're trying to show you how much better the video quality is, and you're going, how are you going to do that?
Yeah, no, it doesn't really work.
No.
But no, God of War seems good. I mean, I'm assuming that it gets a lot better, because even though I'm a big God of War fan, it's feeling like an 8 out of 10 so far, and given the fact that it's got a 95 on Metacritic, I can only assume it starts going somewhere very special quite soon.
Well, I won't spoil it because that would be terrible for you. But basically, because I have very little interest in the series at all, apart from kind of to know about them, I saw an article on Kotaku maybe today, I think, with a big spoiler in, and it wasn't really the kind of spoiler I was expecting, but it seems to imply that the game moves more in the direction of the earlier games, the closer to the end you get, perhaps.
Okay, well, so, I'm up for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it ever gets completely there because simply the mechanics are different, but I think that's the way it appears to go in a direction of. And you'll know when it happens as well, apparently. So,
okay,
yeah,
I'll keep my eye out.
Okay,
I think that is everything I have played, apart from some terrible clickers on my phone, but they don't count.
No. Okay, well, I'll go next then. And one of the games I've been playing is a game called Rogue Aces on the Switch. And it's a small arcadey game, very much in the vein of an old Amiga game called Jet Strike, which you may or may not have played. But basically, you have a World War II fighter plane. You take off from a ship. You fly around, you shoot other planes, you shoot things on the floor, and then you come back to be repaired and refuel. And that's it.
Now, this is a 2D game, is that correct?
Yeah, it's 2D. Although, helpfully, today, there was a game called Sky Rogues released also on the Switch, which seems to, on the face of it, have more or less the same description, but is a 3D flight simulator-y type game. Interestingly. So, but this is the name Rogue within it implies that it's a rogue-like or light probably. So it's one of those ones where when you kind of die, you lose everything apart from the fact you do have 3 lives, and you get occasional upgrades which don't last once you've died, or at least once you've lost all your lives. So I'm probably not describing this very well. It really does require you to play Jet Strike. But
I was going to help you a little bit with that. This is not a scrolling shooter like Capcom's 1943 or 1944. This would be more of a free roaming 2D flight combat.
So think of something more like Defender or possibly Choplifter, that kind of thing.
Actually, what comes to mind prominently in my brain is Herzog Zwei on the Mega Drive, is what I'm thinking of.
I'm trying to think what that looks like, but I'm getting it mixed up with Hellfire. Probably.
Herzog Zwei was the one with the 2-player mode. It's essentially an RTS where you're airdropping resources out of your aeroplane to build up a fortress, and then you land and...
No, it's not that. Although that does remind me of another game that I was playing at some point somewhere, and I can't remember even what that was. But anyway, yes, that might have been that. So basically, as I said, it's an arcade shooter, pretty much. And along the ground, there's a load of like tanks and anti-aircraft guns and buildings and things like that. And every time you land on your every time you land on your ship, you're given a mission to go on, which will be go and kill so many tanks or go and destroy these buildings or whatever. And you go off and you do that task, and then you come back and then you get given the next one. And apparently there's 100 missions, but because it's a roguelite, they're all randomly generated, but they're pretty much all of the same kind of thing. So all the terrain is randomly generated, and the order in which you do things and the number of things you have to kill are. And as you get on, things get a bit harder. There are more planes flying around trying to take you down. Occasionally you get a more powerful plane piloted by a baron who has better armor, better guns, and whatever, a bit harder to take down. But it's a lot of fun. It's I don't know, it's not really my sort of game. Tell you which other game it is. It's just like it's Luft Trousers. Yeah, so it's basically mission-based Luft Trousers.
If I buy a Switch because of your description of Rogue Aces, I'm going to be very cross with you.
Do you like Luft Trousers?
Your description is a very good is a very good sales pitch, and I really want to see what this game looks like now.
Yeah, it's great. One of the other things with it is that there's an awful lot of extra modes that you can unlock. I'm sure there must be something that triggers the unlocks, but it seems to be you just keep playing and eventually they unlock. So there is a mode where you have a map made up of a grid of islands, and you have to get from the bottom left-hand corner island to the top right-hand corner island in a series of missions. So you choose the next island next to you, and then it's got a difficulty rating. Obviously, they get more difficult the closer to the top right you end up. And then there's a set number of missions that don't change on those islands. And once you've done that without dying, you then take over the island, and then you can then move on to the next one. And you have to do all this within 2 days of game time, which I think calculates out about 2 hours or something in real life. If you die,
Go ahead.
If you die, then you have to redo the level. And each time you have a move, so each time you go to another island, there is a Baron coming from the top right hand corner to come and kind of home in on you each move. So eventually, obviously, you'll end up on the same island, and then it will be much more difficult because he'll be there with some of his backup pilots and whatever to try and take you down. So that mode is quite a lot of fun, and I've completed that mode, and it's but there's a lot of replay value there as well, I think, as well. And then there's other modes as well, like there's a mode called Hot Potato. So one of the things you can do in your plane is when it's about to explode, you can eject. And the reason for ejecting is if you blow up in the plane, then you personally die, it's game over. If you manage to eject out of the plane and land somewhere where there aren't any enemies, then you can actually take another plane. So you have 3 lives, which are your planes. So you can carry on living if you like. But something else you can do is you can jump out of your plane and land in another plane. So if you manage to time it correctly, one of the baddies flying after you, you can jump out of your plane, which is about to explode, and land in their plane and take over their plane and then carry on flying.
That certainly sounds like something that happened a lot in the Battle of Britain.
Definitely, all of the time. But this one particular mode, Hot Potato, is basically see how long you can keep hopping from plane to plane. Each time you hop in a plane, you've got a few seconds before it's going to explode, and you have to hop out and hop in another one.
I thought of another comparison point. Mm-hmm. Is this game anything like Armada on the Dreamcast?
I've not played that, so I'm not sure.
The best way to think of Armada is Diablo, but with spaceships. So procedurally generated, missions that are assigned kind of semi-randomly. Mm-hmm. It's all 2D shooting, so it's not like a fantasy combat situation.
Yeah,
I'm sure that the people who comment on the podcast will, gleefully tell us how wrong we both are about that.
Maybe. Anyway, but it's very good. It's funny. It's got nice kind of like arcadey graphics and all that kind of thing, and it's pretty cheap. And it's good. The other thing I've been playing a lot of, and now I'm going to say Yakuza, despite what you say.
Okay.
Now, while I've been playing it, and after hearing how you say Yakuza, I've been listening. Obviously, it's all in Japanese anyway, but I've been listening to what the characters in it say, and I've struggled to hear them say the word Yakuza or Yakuza or anything resembling that at any point in the dialogue, even though the subtitles say that word.
Would you like to know why?
Because
I would be happy to educate you.
Because there is a Japanese word for Yakuza.
Okay. Now, the Wikipedia entry for Yakuza will tell you that it is a slang term which is somewhat derogatory based on the outcome of some gambling scenario where it's a losing hand. Mm-hmm. So the people who call the Yakuza are not part of that life. Mm-hmm. It's like how Westerners will call the mafia. They're not the mafia. They have very specific names for themselves.
Sure.
So what you're going to hear in the Japanese dialogue is when the gangsters are talking to other gangsters about themselves, what they say instead is Gokuto.
Right.
And Gokuto means we don't have time for the whole translation dance, but what it means is honorable societies.
Yeah.
And the notion is that as gangsters, as the spiritual successors to the whole samurai culture, they're the only ones who are keeping order in a civilization gone mad. When you have the infrequent police characters talking to other civilians about the criminal organizations, the word that they'll use is boryukodan, which literally means violence gangs. Mm-hmm. So the Japanese police and the Japanese press are directed to use that word instead of Yakuza because Yakuza has romantic connotations and, it's the word that they use in the movies and everybody would love to be Yakuza secretly because of the sex and the money. But when you do hear them use the word Yakuza, it's generally because somebody's doing so ironically or ignorantly. But you will hardly ever hear the actual characters of the game use the term Yakuza to refer to themselves, if that's, indeed what they are.
Well, that explains that then. So,
sorry.
Thank you very much. Anyway, so the actual game. So far, I mean, you've played it, so obviously you know where I'm up to, and I'll just mention that I'm in Saijima's chapter.
Yes.
So I'm partway through that. But so for the first chapter, I'm Kiryu, and it's pretty much standard Yakuza fare. It's similar to 4. I'm in a city. I can go to hostess clubs, and I can play on the UFO catchers, and I spent an awful lot of time getting every single Mobo and Robo character and Panzer Dragoon character and Knights and God knows what else. I spent far too much time in there. Pachinko and Virtua Fighter 2 and darts and all that kind of thing, and I spent far too long not actually playing the game. Oh, and Taiko Drum Master as well. Which I think is new for Yakuza 5. I don't think that was in 4, maybe. I don't know. Anyway.
Yes, I don't know how they did it, but Sega negotiated with Bandai Namco and said, hey, we want your rhythm game in Yakuza. Will you do it? And they jumped at the chance to do that as a cross-promotional thing. Yeah. So I don't know why, but it's there.
Bizarre, yeah. Anyway, so there's that, and Kiryu's under a pseudonym because he doesn't want to be found, and he's a taxi driver, and he's got a quiet life, and then all of the Yakuza families end up coming to his city, and there are problems because of course there are, and so obviously the first chapter is him dealing with those and what happens there, but it's all standard for as far as the games can go, pretty much standard stuff.
I have to ask, how far into his taxi driving sub-story did you get in the first chapter?
Not an awful lot. I didn't really like the driving. It was a bit weird. It suddenly turned into Tokyo Street Racer.
Yes, it's wonderful. Well, okay,
yeah, but
but remember, it's Tokyo Street Racer with Yakuza power-ups.
Yes.
So you get heat actions. You can hit triangle to get a burst of nitrous and speed past your opponent and win the race. Yeah, and that's how you're supposed to win all the races.
So they're there in their Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift cars, and you're there in your big boxy taxi, and you managed to beat them. Anyway, no, but I didn't play too much of that. I think I beat the head of the all-female street racing gang. So I unmasked her, because that's your reward for beating them, is they get to show you their face. Hooray. I didn't do too much of this.
That makes much more of an impact if you're a fan of the idol who provided the likeness for that character.
Oh, so okay. I presumed it was somebody famous, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a big deal in Japan in 2012, but to us it means nothing.
I'm sure it will. Anyway, so I've done all that. It was slightly disappointing that the actual city, I can't remember the name of the city, but the city you're in is quite a bit smaller than Kamaroko and whatever, but it is fine. It's fine. So then it moved on to Saejima, and there's a bit of a prologue where he's wandering around Tokyo again, maybe? I can't remember. And he goes and says...
He starts off in Kamurochi. It flashes back to the events of Yakuza 4, or to the events right after Yakuza 4, so that you know what he does right before he reports for prison again.
Exactly, yeah. So he's taking one for the team and going to prison for a few years, so that he can come out as a legitimate lieutenant and all this. So he goes and says goodbye to Majima, and off he goes to prison, and gets a lovely new haircut. And then it's kind of flashbacks again to Yakuza 4 with him in prison, but obviously a bit of a different storyline. Wandering around talking to people, half expecting Morgan Freeman to be in there, and he wasn't. And stuff goes down, and you end up escaping. And then for some reason there's a snowmobile race, because of course there is, and then you crash your snowmobile. And then naturally, because it's Yakuza, you fight a 3-meter tall bear, barehanded, because you do. And that just came out of nowhere. So that was fun. And now it's turned into Monster Hunter for some reason.
The reason for that, and you can walk away from the Monster Hunter mode, from Saijima's Monster Hunter mode at any time. Oh, right. But not to spoil it for you, but that bear is a recurring character.
I'm sure it is. There is actually a slight nod as you're about to escape from the prison. There's one guy, he kind of goes to you. He goes, "Oh yeah, there's a giant killer bear out there," and you go, "Yeah, right." And then of course you bump into him. There he is. That's brilliant. But it's so. I know that the series is nuts, but this is. And there's another thing as well. You're in when you're in prison, one of your cellmates, you're sat there and he's got a map of a town, and he's telling you about that's where he used to live and events that happened there. And then he says, why don't we try imagining the event that happened while I was there? And Saijima's like, what? And he's like, no, just like close your eyes and just imagine you're me, and I'll explain this thing that happened. So you walk around what appears to be some kind of, it's almost like a dream sequence, but it isn't, because it's not real. It's not even a real dream. It's like you're just imagining the thing happening. And you do 2 days in the life of this guy, going to one of the hostess clubs and chatting up the woman in there and asking her out on a date, and then coming across a load of triads and beating them up. And it's all very strange. And you go and play pool. Who in their right mind imagines the outcome of a pool match? Just, yeah.
That part of the game functions as a hostess club tutorial for people who haven't done it before.
Oh, absolutely. I can see the reason for that, but it's the way the whole thing has been framed. It's like, who has come up with this and thought that was the best way of doing it? But and this, I haven't even got to the bits where I play as the other character. I'm not going to say. I'm guessing who 2 of the characters. There's 2 more characters I play as, perhaps, and I'm pretty sure I know who they are.
There are 3. There are in fact 3 because it's Yakuza 5. So there will be 5 total protagonists.
Okay, right. Well, I think I know who 2 of them are.
Yes.
One of them based on some artwork that I've already seen, and the other one based on pretty much what it's alluded to at some point earlier on as well. But yeah, so I'm into it. It's great and everything, but it's just boggling and serious and violent all at the same time.
It will get even madder once you get to the next city area. It's anyway. I don't want to spoil anything for you. You should see it all for yourself firsthand.
Absolutely. So that's me, and so I'll pass on to you for obvious reasons.
Right, because the only item on my list would be Yakuza 6, which just came out in the West a week and a half ago, and it is incredibly immersive in a way that previous Yakuza games have not been. Let me explain what's going on. Yakuza 6 is the very last game that our protagonist, Kazuma Kiryu, will appear in. And not to spoil it, but they're going to arrange it in the narrative so that he is not to appear in any future games. By concentrating on just the one protagonist, they've allowed themselves to do this incredibly... I'm struggling for the word here. It's nothing other than poetic. You know how in The Last of Us, that was the first of what they call the dad games, where instead of saving the princess, now you're bearing responsibility for the survival of a child figure.
Yeah.
Much the same way that the new God of War is doing.
Mm-hmm.
In this new game, Kiryu's foster daughter, Haruka, who has just turned 19, is incapacitated, and she mysteriously has a 9-month-old child who is named Haruto. And so Kiryu, by bending the law and the rules of physics, takes custody of the child and has to wander around. This is the first time they've ever done it. It's a real city, and as far as I can tell, it's based on a real map. It's a small town in Hiroshima, where he is looking for the child's father and trying to unlock the inevitable, organized crime mystery that's tied to his birth.
Sure.
But you think Yakuza 5 is mad. I'm just on the 4th chapter of Yakuza 6 now, and for this part of the game, for the last 6 or 7 hours of play, what happens is when Kiryu gets into combat, the first thing he does is he hands the child off to a friendly stranger and says, "Can you watch the child for a minute while I beat up these gangsters?" And then you have your combat, and the combat in Yakuza 6 is amazing. They're calling this new game engine now the Dragon Engine, and what it is it's completely seamless. There's no loading time. There's no cooldown. Immediately upon the combatants discovering you and saying that they want to pick a fight, the combat engine just spins up completely. All the bystanders scatter, and you have literally half a second to start fighting, and it's possible to fail a fight. It's possible for the other combatants to either get tired of you or to beat you enough that they get bored with you and wander off, and then you get no experience points. And then you get the child handed back to you. One of the interesting things is there's a nighttime mission where it's not possible to get into a fight, and you assume that the baby is hungry. So you have to do motion control bits with the DualShock 4 controller in order to rock the baby gently as you're wandering around the city looking for something to feed it.
Right.
It's there's something which is potentially a spoiler that I want to try and talk my way around. It was entirely possible for Yakuza 5 to have been the last game in the series. There's a shot as the game ends where the surviving characters are gathered in the snow, but there's only one set of footprints, which leads you to conclude that there's a possibility that it's not really happening and that it's somebody's delusion as they're dying.
Right.
That's obviously not the case because, all of these characters have carried forward to the next game. But you can kind of see echoes of that in the story that they're telling, because Kiryu has slowed down and he's not really interested in the comings and goings of the Tojo clan anymore. He wants to care for the people that he's identified as his family, and he wants to have just a peaceful life, and he doesn't want to bash heads anymore. And so I'm very interested in what this says about gamer culture and the audience that they're trying to reach. Because if I were a 17 or an 18-year-old, I'm not sure that story would reach me. But being in my 40s and having, played video games all my life and having these, dreary adulthood things driving me now, that's a story that's very meaningful to me. And there are things that I identify with. And I'm not sure how to be more articulate about that, except to say that this is a really satisfying game from a narrative standpoint, and I can't recommend it enough. And that's all I can really say about it without, jumping into spoiler territory that will completely ruin your experience, deKay. So I think I will. I think I will desist at that point.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to moving on to it after this. Although I think actually I've got Kiwami to play next. So,
Kiwami is the remake of the first game.
Yeah,
and
I think I'm going to go back
on that
and
yet?
No, I'm waiting until I've done 5, and then I haven't decided whether I'm going to do. I've got 0 and Kiwami lined up, and I don't know which order to do them in.
In your shoes, after finishing 5, I would do 0 and then Kiwami, and then move on to 6. Yeah. Although by the time you've gotten to 6, Kiwami 2 will be out.
Yeah. Well, I never played 1 and 2. So okay. I only know the stories by the flashbacks that were in 3 and 4. So
okay, then in all seriousness, you should do 0 and then Kiwami first, because you will get a better appreciation for the relationships doing it that way, and you'll get to play Skillelectric's remote control cars.
Excellent, because you need more diversions in Yakuza games. Because
yes,
yeah. Good. Okay, so assuming he hasn't fallen asleep.
No, I'm still here.
Good.
Just one quick question, actually, Kendrick, or
yes.
To both of you. In the Yakuza games, swords, because I'm a bit of a sword geek. Do you get to use katanas in them, or is it just punching?
No. You can pick up and buy weapons, but they're all at limited use. They break after a few strikes.
The sword culture in the Yakuza games is actually a bit more detailed than you would think. Most of the street combatants will tend to carry wooden katanas, which are typically used for training, yeah. But you can still hurt someone with them. And then one step up from that, in the pawn shops and just lying around on the street, you will see what the game calls an unnamed katana. So the description will say something like, "No one knows who made this sword, but it seems very high quality." And then in Yakuza 5, there's a character that I won't spoil for deKay, but he can help you produce new equipment. And so I've
already met him. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Then you know that as you bring him materials and as you bring him raw metals and stuff, you can manufacture better and better and better swords, up to and including a lightsaber. Essentially, they can't call it a lightsaber for copyright reasons, but it is essentially a lightsaber. So Neil, to answer your question directly, the game is lousy with swords.
Yeah,
and
no, that appeals to me. I mean, this is certainly one of these series that I've sort of been looking at and never actually got around to playing. But I will give that a go.
Okay, so what have you got around to playing?
What I have been, so I've been playing the free PlayStation games because I had them piling up. Now I played Deus Ex Human Revolution back on the Xbox 360, and I enjoyed it as a stealth character up until the point that there was a stupid boss battle that you could only beat if you'd been leveling up your gun skills, and so that got very frustrating. Fortunately, in Mankind Divided, it doesn't have that. It's possible to play it all the way through without killing anybody. I didn't quite manage that, but for most of the time it was sneaking around and crawling through vents and reading emails and tidying up. Actually, one thing that seems to be in the future is nobody cares about the flat being untidy. There's rubbish chucked everywhere. And one of the most satisfying little sort of mini missions is where you go into a flat where there's been a murder, and you can, once you've hacked the home security system, you can call up a cleaning service that will come and clean up the flat. And the next time you go, it's a lovely tidy flat, which was strangely satisfying. The rest of the time, it's if you're offended by untidy places, it's an odd game to play. I really enjoyed that. Played that all the way through. And to the point that I also realised I had a Deus Ex game on the iPad that I got ages ago, and I'd read reviews and people were saying heresy. How can you have a game like this on a tablet? And I started playing that, and it actually works pretty well. It's sort of cut down a bit, but it's perfectly playable, particularly if you're sort of stealthing it, because you can tap on the screen where you want to move to, and your character will move there and go into cover. And so as long as you're sort of sneaking around and not expecting to have sort of twitch shooting at things, it works quite nicely. And the graphics are pretty good on that, I would say.
This tablet-based Deus Ex game, this is what's called The Fall, right?
The Fall, yeah. It comes in the continuity. It's after Human Revolution and before Mankind Divided, so it's separate characters. And I think there is actually a novelization that is immediately precedes that game, which I haven't read, but it sort of brings you up to speed on the story. There's a bit of a flashback in it, I think, so it fits into the continuity.
Is Deus Ex The Fall not also available on Windows? I thought that there was a...
Yes, there is. I think I remember at the time this was the major bone of contention, because people were waiting for a new Deus Ex game, and it came out on tablet, and there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then there was a PC port, and I think people were expecting all of the features that had sort of been trimmed and cut down a bit for the tablet to be put back in, and they weren't. So I think that got quite poor reviews at the time. But I've never actually played it. But if you like Deus Ex, then it's worth checking out. I think it's pretty cheap on tablet, and certainly for Deus Ex Mankind Divided, I thoroughly enjoyed that. So I finished that, and the next game that's come out is Mad Max, which I wanted to play for a while and never got around to buying, and then it suddenly turned up on the list. I thought I shall give that a go, and it's great. It has flaws, but the good points on it are it's a fantastic post-apocalyptic world. You've got this dried out deserts and rusted ships and airplanes, and it's like Fallout 4, but you can drive all over it and blow things up, which is enjoyable. Plus, it's still full day and night. The sunsets are fantastic. You get these storms and tornadoes whirling in from time to time and blowing everything around. So the driving around is really nicely done. You gradually build up your car in it. So if you like driving games where you're in sort of deserts or on dirt roads in big V8 type cars, then it's really nicely done. And the car combat where you're bashing into cars, that seems to work well. The one thing I was missing maybe is having machine guns mounted on cars. I loved. There was an old game called Interstate 76, which I think is one of my favourite games. Which I suppose in Mad Max, he never really had guns mounted on the cars. In this, you do get harpoons, and you can get an explosive harpoon later on in the game, which is not quite the same thing. But being able to bash into cars and shove them off the road, and you can fire a harpoon at another car and then reel it in and you use that to take bits off it. So that works well. The bits that don't work quite so well is when you get out of the car. So you have a big open world map with hundreds of objectives on, so things to do and camps to raid and things to find. But when you start going into the camps, Max, he sort of hobbles along. He's not the most athletic character. There's some odd controls on it. But I think Tubry mentioned you've got jump mapped to the left trigger, which is very odd. And he doesn't really jump to any extent. So if you're used to like an Assassin's Creed game where you can run around and climb on anything, this is not it. You just sort of do a very, very pathetic jump. There are places that you can climb up. So anywhere where you can climb, they've helpfully colour-coded it and painted yellow markings so you know which bits you can climb on. But a lot of the time you'll be sort of thinking, I should be able to jump up on that rock, and you can't. It's a little bit frustrating. But the combat works well enough. So you're fighting big gangs of these raiders, and they all sort of helpfully line up and take turns coming at you, and you have to block the incoming attack and then punch them in the face, and that's about it. And eventually you build up your Mad Max Fury meter or whatever it is, and then start crunching bones and throwing people into walls, and it gets quite violent. And I can't really remember the films being that violent, but yeah, I mean,
I can remember a few pretty nasty bits in the films, but yeah, although I've not seen the newest one, so I don't know.
In that, it's Max spends a lot of the time tied up with his a gag on, not saying anything. So
oh really?
It's more. Yeah, it's a very good film, but it's an extended car chase really, which is what this game does brilliantly. So
I have a very important question.
Yeah.
Does the game correctly give everyone a bombastic Australian accent?
Yes, it does. There are good Australian accents in it. It's not over the top, but Max has an Australian accent, and there are various characters that you go and talk to. The names are utterly ridiculous. The main villain is called Lord Scrotus, which makes me chuckle every time I see it. You have this sort of weird hunchback mechanic who sort of rides around in the back of your car and fixes it up every time you stop. And he says, "Lord Scrotus's hordes are coming for us again." So it's well worth playing if you've got it in your PlayStation queue. Then give it a go.
I have actually. I've got so many PlayStation Plus games queued up now that you kind of want to stop paying for PlayStation Plus because there's so many of them you haven't played yet. But if you do that, you can't play any of them.
Yeah, it's
got you over a barrel.
I mean, that was my thought, that I really should play some of these games, and these are one's definitely worth playing, I think.
Yeah, from what you're describing, it sounds like it plays out something like Far Cry 3 or maybe Red Dead Redemption crossed with something like Reckless, or does that?
Yeah, very much. I mean, it did feel a bit like Red Dead Redemption in that these big open deserts that you're driving across, or you could easily imagine doing that on the horse. Mm-hmm. And There's a strange noise coming from, so I don't know if that's me. So the one drawback to it is that the map is full of objectives, so it's very easy to think I'm going to go and complete this mission, and you get distracted by lots of icons on the way.
That sounds very Far Cry-y.
Yeah, it is very like that. That you think, oh, I'm just going to go and knock this tower down and make this area a bit safer, and then you get into a fight on the way, and you start chasing another car, and eventually you forget what you were going to do in the first place and die and go back to where you started.
Yeah, but it's worth playing.
Yeah, worth playing, I would say.
So I think that's pretty much everything we've been playing, and we have a few listener questions that have come in. Again,
before we go on to listener questions, can I add a piece of news?
Go on. Is this breaking news?
No, it's actually from yesterday, but I forgot to add it.
Go on then.
So the Sonic Mania Plus has a release date.
Yes, I saw this.
Which is 17th of July.
Yes.
Sonic Mania Plus being Sonic Mania, but with some new levels, remix levels, and 2 new playing characters.
No, hang on a minute. It says new levels and remix levels, but it seems to be implying that that's as the package was originally.
All right, okay, fair enough.
If you see this as if Sonic Mania didn't exist, the advert for it is suggesting new levels and remix levels, as in what we already had. From what I've seen, I don't think there are actually any new levels. I think there are some tweaks to some levels.
Well, it says there's an encore mode.
Don't know.
Which gives a fresh look to familiar zones with new challenges, layouts, and visual changes.
Oh, in that case, I might be wrong. Yeah,
think of that what you will. And also 2 new playable characters, fan favourites, Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel.
I know. I said to somebody that basically what they've done is they've fixed the Sonic cycle after the game that broke the Sonic cycle came out.
Yes.
That's amazing.
But yes, it's getting a physical release, which is nice.
Yeah.
And it's going to be about £25, which made me go, "Oh, that's really annoying," because I bought it.
Yeah.
But the bit that caught my eye that I hadn't realised when they originally announced it 6 months ago is that you can upgrade your regular version to the Plus version for £3.99.
Yeah. Which I'll probably do and then hate every minute of it, maybe.
Which is entirely reasonable, so that's good. That's my news update.
And when?
So did I?
When was the release date?
It's 17th of July.
Okay.
So am I remembering correctly that you bought the limited collector's edition with the giant Sonic figure standing atop a giant replica Mega Drive?
Yes, that is correct.
Why would you not also buy a disc to go with your limited edition collector's doodads?
I will in time, but I don't want to. I don't need the disc enough to spend £27 on a game that I've already got. I'll wait until it's cheap and then I'll buy it just to put next to all the stuff.
Excellent.
So that's Sonic then, right?
Yep.
Listener questions.
Yep.
Good. Right. So we have some listener questions, and again, I say listeners. Some of them aren't technically listeners necessarily because they're actually members of the podcast crew, maybe. Anyway, so the first question comes from Tubes, and he says, Dark Souls Remastered Switch has been delayed until some undetermined time later in the year. I think they've now said when that's been delayed until, but I'm not sure. Allegedly due to performance issues in Blighttown. Do you think this will affect uptake on Switch, or do Nintendo have a community of masochists prepared to wait?
I don't think it'll make any difference. It's not a big selling game. It's a very, very culty popular game and the press love it, but it's sold less than 3 million in its lifetime across all platforms. In fact, it's sold less than 2.5 million in its lifetime across all platforms. It's not Skyrim.
No. I think anybody who was going to play it on the Switch will wait, and anybody who didn't want to play it on the Switch, it won't make any difference.
Yeah, people aren't going to buy a Switch to play Dark Souls again.
No.
May I offer a counterpoint?
You may.
Dark Souls, the Souls games in general, would be fantastic to have in portable mode, because Dark Souls is a sort of game where you're playing it while you're not touching any technology. You are sat on the bus thinking about this particular boss character or this particular map or this particular puzzle, and you're trying to figure it out. And then you'll have a revelation about it, you'll stand up out of your seat, and then everyone else on the bus will look at you like you're mad. But the people who were going to buy Dark Souls on Switch are generally people who do not already own a Switch. The Nintendo faithful, no offense, deKay, the Nintendo faithful were not very likely to have been waiting for Dark Souls or to be disappointed that Dark Souls has been delayed. So to answer Tubes' question directly, I think that it's not going to affect uptake on the Switch immediately, but once it is released, there will be a massive sales that goes with it. But there'll be new hardware sales and then new sales of the one game, and then it's very likely that the Dark Souls players may not ever buy another Switch game to go with it. So that's going to be that's going to be one of those very narrow, as you say, niche audiences.
No, hang on. As you say,
yes.
As you say, no, we don't say that. We don't say niche.
Okay, what do you say? You say niche.
Niche.
Yeah.
Like quiche.
You're the knights who say niche.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Tube says Kate Winslet. Yes, Kate Winslet, but that's not a question, so we're not going to answer it. The next question is from Jolly Nice Soup, and he says Labo is going to be absolutely huge, like Wii Sports huge, isn't it?
No.
But it comes out tomorrow, and I think it will do well, and it'll be big and it'll be different. I don't think it'll be Wii Sports huge. Nothing really is Wii Sports huge, is it?
GTA 5. That's about it.
I think if you're including Wii Sports coming with all the Wiis, I think it sold more copies than that, didn't it?
No.
No?
No, it's second now. GTA 5 has sold like 120 million now or something absurd.
Okay. Well, I can see it doing really well.
I think it's certainly going to appeal to families. It looks great fun for making with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it looks nice, but it's quite expensive.
It is.
And yeah, it's definitely not going to be Wii Sports huge. And also, will they keep making things for it? I mean, it's been out in America for a week.
Yeah.
And yeah, as far as I'm aware, it hasn't sold 1 trillion.
No, not yet. But it's also one of a number of products, isn't it? It's not one thing in itself. It's not one game. So there's two being released, with more presumably to come. And I'm sure they'll be larger and smaller packets. So.
That is exactly my concern, is that how much more Labo can they do to con people into buying it again? You know, there's going to be a novophilia factor that goes into the initial purchase. Oh, this is great. This is fun. What are they going to follow it up with in terms of the constructible constructs? There I go being redundant again. But what could they follow this up with that's going to keep people buying it as if it were some kind of subscription toy? You know, I see it being successful in the short term. I don't know if it has legs. I don't know if this is something that they can sustain over multiple years. I think it's useful to look at the collectible toys, the amiibos and the Lego Dimensions, and what's the other game with the little figurines?
Skylanders.
Thank you, Skylanders.
And Disney Infinity.
We don't talk about Disney Infinity. You know why?
Do we not? Okay.
No. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Disney Infinity is unfortunately an also ran in that series, but I think it's useful to compare Labo to those because every one of those ended up having an expiration date. You know, they were hot, they were awesome. You wanted to buy them all, and then they were gone. I think Labo is gonna. Yes.
Well, I just wondering with this Labo, are they going to release like a sort of development kit for it? Because I know you can download templates for the cardboard bits and pieces, so you can make more of the cardboardy elements.
Yeah.
But can you program your own games or?
Yes, you can. Somebody yesterday or the day before recreated the Fire Game & Watch game using it.
Oh, fantastic! I mean, that sounds like that could be really interesting if there's a community of people that could release a template for something and a bit of program to go with it. Yeah,
I'm looking at more along the lines of something like Lego Mindstorms. Obviously, you're not quite as flexible. Well, literally, it's more flexible. Physically, it's more flexible. But I mean, it's not as flexible as Lego itself is. You can't do quite so much with cardboard. necessarily, but it's the same kind of field that it's in, I think. And it's the similar kind of cost as well. It's amazing how much a Lego Mindstorms kit actually costs. Even if you take into the cost of the account of how much a Switch itself costs, it's still the same kind of ballpark as a Mindstorms kit. So,
on the other hand, though, you don't have to attach Mindstorms to the internet to get firmware updates.
Oh, you do.
Yeah,
do you now?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, there's a lot on it's on PC or.
Or
it's on Mac as well.
Yeah, there's iPad apps and stuff for it as well. So yeah, you do.
Did Skynet go live and we just missed it? Are we living in that horrible Terminator future now already? Is that happened?
I think we are. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
Alexa, are you Skynet? She says
what did she say?
Not. She says she's not.
No.
All right.
Okay, not yet.
We'll take her word for it.
Yeah. She's got Skynet locked in the basement.
Yeah.
Incidentally.
Yeah.
There is a mission in Yakuza 6 where you have to interact with a Siri competitor on Kiryu's smartphone.
Marvelous.
And it goes someplace very weird and very Skynet very fast. Just, keep that in your back pocket for when you play it eventually.
I will. Next question is from Tim Miller, and he says, and I quote, "Have you ever watched any esports events?" Well, that doesn't make any sense, Tim. So I'm assuming you've spelled something wrong there. Have you ever watched any esports events? I haven't really. I've occasionally watched snippets of things. I think I might have mentioned this one before. Do you know the Street Fighter 3, I think it is, the really well-known match between some guy and Daigo?
I used to know the name of this competitive series, but there's like a long-running Street Fighter competition league.
Yeah,
Evo.
Yes, Evo. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
and everybody must have seen this. Surely, he's fighting. His health is down to virtually nothing. Somebody does an ultra or something on him, and he manages to parry every single hit of like 25 hits or something ridiculous, and then counters and then wins. And the crowd go nuts. And I think that was my first experience of anything like that at all. And occasionally I'll watch other people go, you won't believe what happened in this match, and you look at it and go, it's not as good. But other than that, esports, no, not really.
The only one I've ever watched was Clash Royale. So I went through a phase of playing that and enjoyed it, and then there was a big Clash Royale tournament. It was really well done over a weekend. You could follow all of the matches, and then they had the final on a big stage, and they were sat on thrones and huge projections. So it was really well done, and it was the sort of game I can't really follow first-person shooter games. The ones I've seen, it's just too much going on, or the MOBAs, they're too involved. But this is simple enough that the matches start off and you can follow what's happening, what the tactics are, and each match takes a maximum of 3 minutes as well. So you can see a reasonable amount of the competition and follow what's going on, and the commentary gives you, tells you what to expect. So I enjoyed that, but I've not found anything that's sort of been quite the same as that. I'm no interest in watching any of the Hearthstone tournaments, because that just seems crazy. People play them and somebody puts down a card and it all goes mad and they've won somehow, which I never really understood.
But then people watch poker tournaments. I don't understand that either.
I was going to say my contribution to this answer is that I have actually sat and watched a few hours of competitive Pokemon with commentary. That was back when Twitch was new. And I discovered that I hate color commentary. It's insane because all sports announcement is the same. You have the one person who's doing the play-by-play, who's explaining to you what's happening and what the likely outcome is. And then you have the other person doing the color commentary, whose job it is to explain what the competitors were thinking and what was going through their minds and how they messed up and how they're likely to respond. And it was just so dreary. One person whose expertise was anticipating when a certain elemental attack would come up, or anticipating when a power meter would fill up. And I couldn't shake the feeling, is this really something that people have developed skill in? not the actual playing of the game, but the analysis of the playing of the game. That feels like a bridge too far over a dry riverbed in a post-apocalyptic society where nothing has value. That's gone someplace dark fast. So, do you like esports?
Well, I mean, in English sporting broadcasts, I'm assuming the same is true in America. The co-commentator, as we call them here, in 99% of instances is a retired ex-pro, kind of giving their insight. But I'm going to assume that the co-commentator at this Pokemon tournament wasn't a recently retired Pokemon wizard. So that's a bit different.
We have reached a point in our society where that is possible.
Actually, we probably have. Because what's the
a retired professional Pokemon player? Really, you have that on your business card?
Well, they'd retire at 14, don't they?
Yeah.
Well,
what's the when do you peak playing these games?
When are you too injured and too bruised and scarred to continue playing competitive Pokemon? I don't know the answer to that question. At what point do your sponsorships dry up? At what point are you no longer able to contribute to the training of younger and fitter players?
Yeah. Well, to answer the question, not really. I watch Games Done Quick a few times. They're streaming again soon, so doing their summer Games Done Quick. So I'm sure I'll look through the lineup and catch a few bits of that.
Yeah, I sometimes watch those. They're quite interesting, more than. Yeah. Although they can get quite stressful when they're really up against it and they've just made a mistake and they've been playing the same game for 14 hours and.
I don't watch the ones that are 14 hours. I tend to watch the Sonic ones. I watched the Sonic 2006 one because they did it in an hour, and I'm like, how can you complete a game in an hour that is so fundamentally broken that you can't actually reliably get through it? And sure enough, they failed because they kept falling through the floor.
Yeah.
Which was inevitable. But kind of general organised esports events, not really. Like I know about Evo and the International because they get spoken about at length on other podcasts I listen to, but I've never watched them. I don't really have any objection to them. They just never really focus on the games I'm interested in. If there was a Titanfall one, then I'd give that a watch. And I watched like some of the high-level Destiny players doing raids and stuff just to kind of get pointers and ideas. But most of the organised tournaments seem to be for MOBAs and Overwatch, and I don't want to watch MOBAs or Overwatch.
No. On the subject of esports, can I ask if all three of you are familiar with who Ben Yahtzee Croshaw is?
Yeah.
Of Zero Punctuation.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
On his YouTube channel, he used to do a show called Let's Drown Out, where he would play an hour of a game and then complain about the gaming industry at large over playing the game and not tell you anything about what he was doing. And he would do this with a friend of his, and I vividly recall at some point he was saying that as a games journalist, he was aware of esports and that he was surprised that they were so popular and so big and such a money-making venture, and that he had almost no contact with it as a games journalist. And
is he a games journalist, or does he just do a weekly angry video where he complains about how much he hates every game he's ever played that isn't Dark Souls?
Well, he does also do a more standard video game review in prose format somewhere on The Escapist, and he does an opinion column on top of that, and then he does all of his other writing. So he is as much a games journalist as any other Yahoo with a blog and a dream. But that question rings in my mind: is esports something huge, and we're just out of touch with it because we're too old or too not with it? Are
just
we not
disinterested?
To get it?
I think there's obviously a big movement, but for the most part, it's just internet based, and it's mostly bypass TV. I think there's obviously it appears there a bit, but it's not front and center the same as ordinary sport.
I think for the most part it's MOBAs. I think like 99% of big level esports apart from Evo is Dota and League of Legends. Yeah. So if you are not interested in those games, there's not really much for you.
You have to understand a reasonable amount about them for it to make any sense. Otherwise it's just things blowing up and wizards and goblins, and makes no sense at all.
Yeah, I suppose you're never going to see a League of Legends game being televised in the pub.
No. And not least because, I mean, yeah, it's kind of, you do have to have an understanding. I mean, not necessarily a full understanding, but like if you're watching, athletics or football or tennis or something, even if you don't really understand all of the rules, you can still kind of admire the athleticism, and you can tell that what these people are doing is really quite physically astonishing. But if you're watching esports, you're just seeing the game screen with like no context of the game. You've no idea if they're any good or not. If you've played like 1,000 hours of Call of Duty and you're watching somebody really good, you can appreciate that they're really good and why they're really good. But if you don't play it, you don't really have any frame of reference. It's just a dude running around a screen.
Let me go someplace controversial for a moment.
Do that.
Is Formula One closer to traditional athletics or closer to esports in that context?
I would probably put it down as closer to esports.
Certainly is now.
Yeah, well, yes. But I certainly don't think it makes for a great televised spectacle unless you're really, really into it. You don't really get the true sense of speed, and it is just kind of cars going around a track. And no, I'm sure it is extremely technical and very physically demanding, but I don't really think that you can appreciate that from watching it on TV unless you're really into it and you really know what's going on.
Okay. I'm ready for angry comments from racing
Luffers.
Fans.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, if Luffers is on next week, I'm sure I'll get a bollocking.
Our final question then, which isn't a question at all. It's from he's from the group, but we haven't seen him on there for quite some time. It's Leon Seaman, Ski Jump Toes, and he says woo woo woo, and there's not even a question mark, so I don't really know what we're supposed to make about that. So maybe he was
what is that in Morse code? Dot dash.
I don't know. I don't think it makes sense in that either, is it?
No. I'm just making sure he's not, asking for assistance at sea or requesting a food delivery or something.
Well, I suppose that's possible. He might be dead now, so yeah.
So he's haunting us.
Yeah. Oh, well, never mind.
No,
maybe he'll let us know.
Normal for Norfolk.
Oh, he is Norfolk, yeah. Yeah, so that's possibly true. So...
you're the authority, are you not, deKay?
I live here, yeah, I'm not from here, but yeah, he is local, so or local to me. So that's it, and well, thank you very much for listening, everybody who's been listening, especially those people who've listened this far.
It was only meant to be an hour.
Well, I'm sure whoever's playing on the podcast just play twice as fast as normal. It would be fine. Although we should have probably told them that at the beginning rather than now.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to it again any quicker this time.
Maybe that can be the pre-show snippet.
It could be, yeah. So if anybody would like to send us any comments, then they can email us on podcast@ugvm.org.uk, or they can send us a tweet at ugvmpodcast. If you would like to contact me on Twitter, you can at deKay01. Anybody else? Zoe?
I'm at Zamoniac.
Neil?
At Thermal Satsuma.
And the Twitterverse, Kendrick?
Come and see us at gamesx.com if you like modding old game consoles.
Do that. And absolutely support us on Patreon. We haven't got the Patreon. And buy our mattresses and our shaving paraphernalia and all those other things.
We sell lingerie now. We have UGVM lingerie.
Do we?
Yeah, it's pre-worn by me.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we have to pay more for that.
That is the pre-show snippet.
This is disgusting.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.